So good morning and welcome to a Monday morning mailbag on a Tuesday afternoon, recorded on a Wednesday. I am on the road right now, so our schedule is all over the place right now. Currently in Edmonton, in my dad's basement. The Edmonton Comedy Festival starts Friday, which is why I'm out this way. Very excited for that. They kind of assemble a bunch of the best comics from all around the country, and we get to perform on bigger stages than we're used to. I was up in Yellowknife and Hay River playing bars and stuff like that, and now I get my little taste of theaters this weekend. So if you are in Edmonton, the Edmonton Comedy Festival, check that out. I'm Scott Belford. This is the walk off. Adam Mack was supposed to join me yesterday. We were all ready to go, and then I couldn't get any internet, out visiting my in-laws out of town. So we were moving it to today, and then Adam was busy. So you're going to need to just put up with a solo show here. Disappointing game yesterday. Obviously, Bowden Francis pitched another gem. Talk about an incredible end to his season. Very exciting stuff. And I know over the last month, I've been slow to jump on board with actually putting my faith into Francis. But I think I'm at that point now where, yeah, I see him slotting in as that number three guy in the rotation next year. Now, do the Blue Jays still need pitching upgrades? Yes, they do. A high end guy, that ace-like dude, would love to see it. We're going to get to all of your questions and comments in just a second here. You can always reach out on Twitter at Walk Off Podcast, on Instagram, the Walk Off Podcast. You can automatically get all your comments and questions in if you are a Patreon member. We call it the Patreon bump. Along with that, you also go instant access to all of our interviews, as well as MLB Mondays, so bonus content every single week. Let's get into it. Before we do, though, I've got a question for you folks. Okay? So I'm answering your questions here, but I do wish to know what you folks think, and drop your comments here on YouTube. The Pittsburgh Pirates last night designated for assignment former Toronto Blue Jay Rowdy Tellez, who had a pretty decent season for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Definitely saw more at bats than I think they were expecting him to. Now, this is interesting because for anyone wondering why the Pirates would do this with 6 games left in the season, Tellez gets a $200,000 bump if he reaches 425 plate appearances. He's at 421. Literally one game away from that 200 grand bump. So my question for you, the grounds crew, is what do you think of that? Because my original and still current feeling is the Pirates kind of screwed him over. And it's not a very good look on an organization when they're going to go into free agency this 2025 offseason and try and convince guys to come by for a 1-year deal where maybe there's incentives involved in that contract. And if I'm a player, I'm going to look at what they did to Rowdy Tellez, screwing him over 4 at bats, and I'm going to look elsewhere than the Pirates. It does remind me too, remember when CC Sabathia was just innings away from getting that, I think it was a $500,000 bump with the Yankees, and he wound up hitting a guy. There was some stuff that went on before that, obviously, but it was in retribution. And the team wound up just paying him his bonus anyways because they were so impressed that he had his team's back. And this is kind of the opposite of that. So let me know, Rowdy Tellez, is this just business or is this a bad look for the Pittsburgh Pirates? So we will get into the Blue Jays now. By the way, 5% chance currently the Jays have at the number 1 pick overall. This is how bad this team has been the last week. 5 in a row now they've lost. It is a whimper to end the season. 5 games left. Sure would love to see them beat Boston tonight and eliminate them from the playoffs. It would be just a little bittersweet, a little cherry on the shit sandwich that has been this 2024 season. So going to Twitter, let's start with this. Grogan tweeted at us, JFC, exclamation mark. How many times will this team learn to not pitch to the guys with the hot bat and continues to kill them? Fire Schneider right now, and anyone who thought that was the right move. Now, what's funny is I actually missed the 2 Tampa Bay Ray games on Saturday and Sunday. First time I think I've missed 2 games in a row in years. I was up in Hay River and Yellowknife, so just not a lot of service there and driving constantly. Just missed the game. So I'm not even sure exactly what he's referring to, although I did look and see what happened afterwards. And yeah, frustrating series, obviously. John Schneider, is he going to be the manager in 2025? Just one of many questions that we're going to kind of need to wait and see what happens before that is answered. A lot of frustration with the way this team has been managed, and it's understandable whenever a team doesn't perform to what their expectations are. Blame has to fall somewhere, and I think John Schneider definitely has some blame to share in this whole scenario. Moving on, Jason with a Y, Jayson, DM'd us. He goes, hey guys, obviously there's a lot of decisions to be made about the guys who are currently on the roster. Outside the current 40 man, who do you think is the most likely guy to contribute to the 2025 Blue Jays? So I love this question. I've been reporting on the Buffalo Bisons all season, the AAA affiliate of the Toronto Blue Jays. I've been lucky enough to be in the presence of these guys, get to watch them develop over the year. And the one guy who really stands out, and I know I'm not alone in saying this, friend of the show, you can check his interview out on YouTube here or wherever you get your audio podcasts. Alan Roden. This kid got bumped up to AAA in June, and he struggled out of the gate, which definitely makes sense whenever there's that transition of a young guy from AA to AAA. There's going to be some adjustments that need to be made. Pitching is better, and they definitely know their sequencing better and can kind of fool these kids who are used to being able to kind of tell if it's going to be a breaking pitch outside of the zone or if they're rearing back to throw a fastball down the pipe, right? So Alan Roden, though, since adjusting, has been probably the brightest spot in this Blue Jays farm system, especially with some of the hits that this organization has been dealt with. Ricky Tiedemann going to the IL and needing Tommy John, along with a laundry list of pitchers, including Chad Dallas, another gentleman who is a friend of the show who could have contributed going into 2025. Aroldis Martinez and his PED suspension. You know, like there was a lot of shit that this organization's farm system had to deal with this year. But the bright spot, Alan Roden, has been incredible. He is tied for the 9th highest weighted runs created plus over 143 games in the minors for a Blue Jay. And this is over a minimum of 700 plate appearances. So this is a pretty big sample size. He's showing power. He plays right field for the majority of the time, but definitely can move over to play left and has experience there. Alan Roden sees the ball incredibly well and is a very intellectual offensive player. He kind of gets when to hold them and when to fold them, to steal one from Kenny Rogers there. So definitely Alan Roden is my pick for the guy who is not on the 40-man currently, but will definitely be given a really good look in spring training. He could make the team out of there. The organization may decide that he starts in AAA and he is a call-up midway through the season. So go ahead and place your comments below. Is there a guy in this Blue Jays farm system you've kind of been keeping your eye on and can expect to see them maybe improve this team in 2025? Someone who can take a spot? Would love to hear about it. Let me know. Eric Pardino on the pitching side, by the way, I think he's going to get a real look in the bullpen next year. There'll be a lot of guys being given a bullpen look with this pen being just on fire. I mean, we saw it last night, right? Francis pitched a gem just to watch the bullpen blow it in the 10th. And I mean, frustrating for Jays fans who are just looking for little victories at this point, including eliminating the Boston Red Sox from their playoff hopes and need to wait another day here. So Eric Pardino, Brazilian pitcher who was drafted in 2018, not drafted, sorry, taken in the international free agent class. I actually have an article that I wrote on him on Crier Media that you can check out, Eric Pardino. He's back. He was the number 5 prospect for the Blue Jays in 2018, and he has had nothing but bad luck and injuries, and I think he's going to get a legitimate shot in this big league bullpen come 2025. Brady DM'd us on Twitter, and he says this was kind of about Adams and my talk last mailbag on Vladdy. So he goes, hey guys, for mailbag, I know you're both on the pro extend Vladimir Guerrero Jr. train. I'm really on the fence if the money would be worth it. And then he's got an exclamation or in parenthesis here. Don't get me wrong, I do love Vladdy. Can you both give your arguments for why you feel this would be the right move long term? We'll probably circle back on this a little bit on Friday and get Adam's opinion, but for me, there's a few big reasons why Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is such an important fit for this team. Every organization needs a top 10 player in baseball. Top 10 players in baseball, there's not enough teams for every team to have one. And Vladdy has shown us in 2021 and again this year in 2024, he can be that guy. He's 25 years old. And I think something that gets lost a little bit with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is how darn resilient he is with playing time. The guy plays a ton. He is on the field constantly. And I think that that is something that maybe should be given a little bit more attention. Look at this. This is from friend of the show, Matt, Nay Takes on Twitter. He goes, Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s percentage of games played per year. So in 2019, his rookie year, he played 89.8% of his games. 2020, the pandemic year, 100%, all 60 games. In 2021, 99.4%. He missed one game, 161 games this man was on the field. 98.8% in 2022, 96.3% in 2023, and 98.1% in 2024 here. The guy's an Iron Man, and there is legitimate value in being able to pencil in a guy like that every single game. You know where the guy is going to be, and you know what? Having the fact that he can play a little bit of third base, again, it does open up the ability for the Blue Jays to be a little creative. Again, I don't wish to necessarily see him at the hot corner for 155 games, but if he's going to get 50 to 60 games there, and that frees up a little bit of a spot for another first baseman and or a DH where they can kind of get the best bats into the lineup as much as possible, nothing but value there. But that's not the only reason that I think Vladimir Guerrero Jr. should be the guy that the Blue Jays signed to this mega deal. And that is, this is his team now. You're starting to see leadership come out of this guy that I didn't think he had. He's been so good with the kids. All of these young rookies really look up to him. They know he's been there. He's done that. And he just seems truly motivated to take the next step, which, again, something that just is super impressive. And if you look at this, Chris Black at Down to Black gave out these stats just yesterday. So a 320 average, 30 plus home runs and 100 RBIs in Blue Jays franchise history. Carlos Delgado in 2000, and then Vladdy in 2024. That's it. Those are the only guys to ever hit 320. And then on top of that, 30 dingers and 100 RBI. He seems like the guy. There's a lot of risk. A lot of term is going to be needed to lock this guy up long term, but I personally would like to see the Jays do it. Drop your comments below. Where are you at on this? It's an interesting question because there are so many people that are like, I'm on the fence. It depends on the term, depends on how much money. Of course, I love Vladdy. Of course, I'd like him to be on this organization for as long as possible. But also, I don't wish to hamper our chances at signing other important pieces to get it done. Who wishes a Los Angeles Angels Mike Trout scenario? Totally valid point. Time will tell where this front office lands. Going into Patreon now, of course, if you are a Patreon member, you automatically get your comments and your questions into the mailbag. And as if that's not enough, you get instant access to all of our interviews and our shows and bonus content for MLB Mondays. So this one is from Metal Manic. He sent us a message, and this is about Adam's solo show he did on Friday. I was busy, so Adam Mack doing the heavy lifting there, and he had a pretty good chat about Alex Bregman and where he could possibly fit into this Blue Jays lineup. Metal Manic says, rather than Bregman, I'd much prefer the Jays invest in Pete Alonso and lock down Vladdy for third base. And there is a real argument to be made there for that. Pete, of course, one of the premier power hitters in baseball, and the Blue Jays definitely do need more home runs going into 2025. It's been one of their Achilles heels over the last couple of years. So, yeah, Pete would be a good fit. Pete is going to cost some big money. But as for term, I don't know where it's going to land. It is going to be interesting to see what his market looks like come November 7th, I think, whenever it is, right after the World Series when free agency starts. I'd be fine with the polar bear. What are your thoughts on Pete Alonso? And I would love to hear from you, the grounds crew, if there is a preference. Like, if the Blue Jays do decide to go out and spend some real money on free agency, and it's between, let's say, Alex Bregman, and Pete Alonso, is there a preference there? You know, where does Anthony Santander fit into your folks' want and needs list? Some big bats out there, and that's something that the Blue Jays definitely need. Would we like to see a reunion with Teoscar Hernandez? Is that the preferred route? So let us know, and we will try to get to this when Adam is back on Friday. Moving along, this is from Mish. So Mish reached out on Patreon, and she is talking about the same discussion here. So Alex Bregman, or Pete Alonso. She goes, we need to focus on pitching first and foremost. After that, if we can get a big bat outfield as well without selling the farm, emptying the coffers, for sure. We have half a dozen infielders who just need consistent playing time to come into their own before they're the next sought after free agents. So spending big on a first base or third baseman, nah. That's actually a really good point about there is a dozen infielders with this Toronto Blue Jays team right now who there isn't enough playing time for, and I think everyone knows what we're talking about. It's Will Wagner, Spencer Horowitz, Davis Schneider, Leo Jimenez, Ernie Clement, the Buffalo Boys. And I think that Misha's onto something here where getting some pitching for this team is incredibly important. Starting with the bullpen, which has been a complete dumpster fire since about mid-June, and obviously even more so after the trade deadline and unloading any of those expiring contracts that had value. It was a hit to the bullpen because there just wasn't the young up-and-coming guys to fill those holes. We all knew that was the case, but now that we're seeing it firsthand, it's tough to watch. So the bullpen is going to need to be completely revamped, and I know I kind of mentioned it off the top of the show. A stud starting pitcher at the top of this rotation, I really do think is an important thing for this team to go out and do for 2025. And like Mish said, there is that half a dozen players vying for time in the infield. Maybe we can package a couple of those up and bring in that top end pitcher, right? If you can move, let's say, a Will Wagner and a Leo Jimenez, throw in another prospect and get a guy who's on 2 or 3 years and extends this window a little bit longer, maybe that is the move. They're definitely going to need to make some major decisions with this roster because they cannot go in with all of these fringy, toolsy guys that still have a lot of development to go if they truly are planning on on contending come 2025. Time will tell what this organization decides to do and where this front office is actually going to put their time. You know, like, are they going to spend big in free agency? Are they going to try and bolster this lineup through trade? Time will tell. We'll see what happens. Where do you folks think the biggest needs for this team are? And I don't need to hear about the bullpen. We're all aware the bullpen needs to be revamped, but where would you like to see this team focus their energy on? I mean, after watching the last few games, especially that Tampa Bay Rays series, it's pretty obvious that offense is still a major need for the Toronto Blue Jays. And so I think at least one big bat is going to need to be necessary here. Moving on to Mark Draber, also a Patreon member. Big thanks to all the Patreon folks out there throwing us a few bucks a month. It is appreciated, $4 a month, and it gets you automatically into the mailbag, gets you bonus content, gets you instant access to all of our interviews. So Mark Draber says, mailbag question. Alejandro Kirk has played quite well since the Jansen trade. Is this a second opportunity to trade him away? Or is the catcher depth so depleted it doesn't make sense to move him anymore? Alejandro Kirk is pretty much a necessity on this Blue Jays team in 2025, in my opinion. The guy has done a lot to improve himself defensively, and he has actually put himself into the conversation of one of the best defensive catchers in all of baseball. Some of his major down points a year ago, 2 years ago, was his throwing arm, keeping runners in check, which he has managed to really, really improve and put himself into that top 10 catchers at holding base runners. His arm has looked really good this year. And even the way he moves out from the plate when there's a little dribbler and can pick it up and throw down the first base line to get guys there, he has improved that skill tenfold since 2022 when Kirky's big tool that everyone was excited about was his bat. Now, his bat still is a below average bat right now, but the catching position, that tends to be the case with very, very few exceptions. So can the Blue Jays go out and get a guy to tandem with him where maybe it does add a little bit of pop? I know my eye's still on Danny Jansen. Blue Jays fans obviously miss Jano. I think it would be a good reunion. Is there still the relationship there to be able to do that? Right? Like, has Danny soured on the Blue Jays after the organization that he grew up in, spent 11 years with, traded him at the deadline? I don't know. I think money talks. I think Jano, if the right deal is presented, would absolutely come back to Toronto. What do you folks think? And is Alejandro Kirk the guy you'd like to see behind the plate next year? Like, is there a free agent catcher out there or maybe a trade they can make to upgrade that position? Possibly. That would surprise me if that's an angle they're taking, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. Let me know. And as for Blue Jays catchers within the system, it is pretty thin. And don't get me wrong, I mean that with the utmost respect to Phil Clark, who is probably the closest thing to an internal option with this team right now. He was drafted back in, I think it was 2021. It was the Austin Martin draft. I should have looked this up before I started talking about this, but here we are, folks. So he was drafted out of Vanderbilt. I think it was in the 5th round and has really progressed his way up. He finished the season with AAA Buffalo. Light on the bat, so this is another defensive catcher first type of guy until he at least develops more on the offensive side of things. I don't think he's a legitimate option to start 2025, and I do think that the Blue Jays are going to need to go and fill that secondary catcher role outside of the organization. So thanks for the message, Mark. Now we're going to go to YouTube to wrap things up here. Again, you can always reach out to us on Twitter at Walk Off Podcast. You can drop your comments into the YouTube comment section here, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. The grounds crew, we appreciate you, and feel free to let us know what you're thinking, because as the season gets closer to wrap up here, we're going to have a big show where we break down everything from the 2024 season, and would love to hear what you're thinking, and would love to hear what your thoughts are on the 2025 season coming up and what this team needs to do if the lip service of this front office is true and they are actually going to try and contend in 2025. So this is a YouTube comment from Disa. She says, and this is from the Friday show Adam did solo. So Adam, after my stomach tumbled more than a little bit, listening all the guys with the injuries and physical issues, and my goodness, the laundry list of injuries on this Blue Jays team and organization in general is not pretty right now. She's like, you lighten my heart a little with the evergreen. That's a no from me, dog. Well played, sir. So yes, Adam Mack, every once in a while, he's got a funny one up his sleeve. The next comment here, also from YouTube, this is from Scott Carter, and he commented on last mailbag. He said, I hope I am wrong, but it is my belief that the front office has no intention of ever signing Vlad or Bo. Based on the history of this front office, it does not seem like a move that they would make. I believe they will try to make everyone believe that they intend to sign them, but the deal just could not be made. When they don't sign them, I believe they will try to frame it as it was Bo and Vlad's fault. We as a fan base don't have a lot of faith left in Ross Atkins, and Mark Shapiro, I think, is really the crux of this comment. And he does hit on a very true point that this doesn't seem like the sort of deal that this front office would make. And I think that just goes from their track record, right? Name me a mega deal that Atkins and Shapiro, and you can go all the way back to the Cleveland days, that have done. Have they made some shrewd signings? Absolutely. Have they done big deals? George Springer, 6 years, $150 million. Tough to bat an eye at that. They got Rogers to really cough up big on that one. And then the fact that they managed to convince Rogers to go all in on Shohei Ohtani, which was going to cost $700 million. I mean, yes, they are prepared to spend some money. Is there any example of them going over 6 years, with the exception of the interestingly structured Jose Barrios extension where they signed him for 5 years and then there's an opt-out and then 2 more years? No, that's the longest contract that this front office has dealt with. Can you see them going over 10 years? It's going to take at least that to sign Vladdy long term. I think Juan Soto's contract is going to be a very interesting one, and something that nothing will happen with Vladdy until Soto is locked up, because I think it's going to be a fairly comparable deal to what Soto gets. Let's say Soto gets $450 million. Vladdy's going to probably get $350 minimum. Maybe pushing $400. Is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. worth $400 million over 12 years? Would you sign him for that? Will the front office? Like, I really don't. It's hard to argue with Scott Carter on this one, because as much as I'm like, they are going to do it. They're going to sign Vladdy. They need to. They need butts in seat. They've just put $500 million into the Rogers Centers and renovations there to draw more fans. How can they afford to let the face and the hype of this man over the last 5 years just go to waste? But again, it's like earlier we talked about it. I forget who it was now who brought this up. Let me scroll up here to my notes. Yeah, Jason with a Y. Nope. Brady. Brady brought up that he likes Vladdy. He's just not sure if the amount of money it's going to take is going to hamper the team long term. So, yeah, I think the Blue Jays absolutely have the resources to lock Vladdy up for 12 years, $400 million. But are the resources and the money going to keep flowing, or is this again an Angels Mike Trout scenario where I don't particularly care to watch a bad team with one really great superstar? So is there going to be enough money to go around to bolster their other areas? I don't know. But Rogers is the second wealthiest ownership group outside of Steve Cohen. I know that the money still needs to make sense and that the profits still need to be thought about here. But maybe we are hitting a point where Rogers will spend big to bring a winner to Toronto. Time will tell. What do you folks think? Are you on Scott Carter's side? Do you think this front office even has it in them to go with a mega deal? And if you look around the landscape of baseball, it's funny how many mega deals have worked out and how many of them have not. So, you look at guys like Bobby Witt Jr. and Julio Rodriguez, and you're like, okay, still young. Bobby looks really good. Julio had some weird stints of baseball over the last year or two, but we saw what he did in his rookie season. Is it all going to play out? Then you also see mega deals like Aaron Judge, and you're just like, okay, he's still the best player in baseball, and he's literally carrying this New York Yankees team right now. So time will tell. Would you like to see Vladdy with a mega deal? Would you like to see him long term? I think I do. Will that hamper them signing Bo? Hamper them signing other free agents? Your guess is as good as mine. Moving on. So this comment is from the Chuck, and this is from Mailbag last week. So Gino Suarez, he says. Gino Suarez at third is a good call I hadn't thought of. Always been one of those guys I felt was criminally underrated. Streaky, like he said, but yeah, I'll take it. I think he'd vibe with this team a lot. And if they do well last year and bring back the good vibes, I think he'd be a great fit. And Gino's a guy I also didn't think of. Again, very hot and cold. We compared him to Lourdes Gurriel Jr. on Mailbag last week, in that when he's hot, and not every guy in baseball, when they're hot, can put the team on their shoulders and carry them. Baseball is one of the streakiest sports out there anyways. Everybody's hot and cold. You need to deal with cold streaks and slumps. Genos tend to be big and long, but when he's hot, he's been carrying this Diamondbacks team for literally 2 months pretty much. And man, when he's hitting dingers, he is hitting dingers. Like when he is seeing the ball, there's not many better out there. So, yeah, he improves this team in 2025. If they decide to go the Gino Suarez route, which would definitely be more of a 3-year, 2-year, 11 mil a year guy, right? A little bit more of a easier pill to swallow when it comes to the finances side of things. And then maybe they can go into the outfield to bring in a big bat there as well. Tyler O'Neill was mentioned last week. Yeah, Gino Suarez. I'd be all right with that too. Thanks for the comment there, Chuck. Okay, final comment of the mailbag. We're going to wrap up here. Again, thank you to all of you who have commented and contributed over the week. You can always reach out to us on Twitter at Walk Off Podcast, Instagram, the Walk Off Podcast. You can get your automatic message, or you can automatically get your message and comments into the mailbag by being a member of the Patreon. We call it the Patreon bump. Or you can leave your comments in YouTube. So this is the last YouTube comment of the day. This is from C. Forte. He goes, this is my lineup. Shortstop, Willy Adames. Second base, Spencer Horwitz. Third base, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. DH/first base, Pete Alonso. Love that pickup. And then Ernie Clement in at third base. Joey Loperfido as fourth outfielder in left field. Kirk as catcher. Nathan Lucas, I should say, in right field, which is interesting. Lucas has done nothing but hit since being a member of the Blue Jays, and really has done nothing but hit his last 2 years in AAA. Center field has been, of course, Dalton Varsho is who he would like to see there. Eat the Springer salary, he says. Make him a bench player. Obviously, this assumes a Bo trade for pitching happens. What do you think of that lineup, folks? Is C. Forte onto something here? I do like the addition of Pete Alonso. My God, a big bat like that would be so juicy in the middle of this lineup, and definitely has been something that this organization has lacked since moving on from Lourdes and Teo. There just hasn't been that pop. in the 4, 5, 6 hole like there was in 2021 and 2022. All right, folks, we're wrapping it up there. I'm Scott Belford. Thank you so very much for following along. If you have yet to hit like or the subscribe button, you know it is appreciated. Edmonton Comedy Festival this weekend. If you are an Edmontonian, come check it out. Take care, gang. Cheers.